neuroscience has proven roughly about 15 years ago was when this psychology breakthrough happened. And again, we're not neuroscientists here. This is not medical advice. This is understanding enough to be dangerous about a topic to understand why people don't act and some and get no results and stay struck and stay addicted to struggling, and why some do, seemingly the same person. And I've seen it over and over again, both of course from people who take our education, but also in person in live events. I've met thousands of people over the years who, again, it's even more striking when you meet people in person and you're looking at two similar people right there, and one is getting extraordinary results, another is not. They can't figure it out. They're addicted to struggle. They're always struggling. And it boils down to not trying something for a week, not trying something for a month, but consistently acting yourself until you think differently. And for a lot of people, this process can take some time, especially if you have a lifetime of neural pathways that are ingrained in your brain for a certain way of thinking or behaving and or default things that you're triggered about. A lot of times becoming untriggered over certain behaviors from people is not that you're going to talk your way out of it. It's that you're literally going to build a new neural pathway from talking, but mostly acting or not reacting, and finding a different coping mechanism that is healthier than just getting triggered and then doing the same thing over again. This shows up in relationships. It shows up in business. It shows up in every area of our life. And so I love the 48-hour rule concept, because when you have an opportunity to, when you learn or see something that you want to try or implement, speed of implementation is everything. And a lot of this ties into sort of old sayings that we're all familiar with. Money loves speed. Well, that's a kind of a cliche, easy way to say that, look, you build good habits and you build a business through, once you have an idea, implementing it as fast as possible. Because not only is that going to build that habit and that neural pathway, it's going to blaze that pathway into your brain of being okay with testing things, trying things, throwing spaghetti at the wall, not being so worried about whether it succeeds or fails, and just taking that whole succeed or failing out of your vocabulary altogether. But it also blazes a new neural pathway in your brain when you take action on things, because you sort of stop going down the old path that you probably always have been, which is, an idea comes up and then you go through, and a lot of times we have the same pattern every single time. We go through a process of, well, it's probably not going to work for me, maybe some self-loathing, then some bitterness or blaming or victim stancing. Well, that's great that it works for them, or must be nice, or like whatever the things that we say to ourselves. Money doesn't grow on trees. Our families just doesn't. We're hard workers. We're blue collar workers. We don't do that internet stuff, that tech, whatever your talk track is. It's likely a pattern that it may vary with some words, but likely when a new opportunity is presented or you have a new idea, you likely go through a pattern in a sequence of thoughts which leads to doing nothing. You doing nothing with it. And that is the neural pathway that's blazed inside of your head, inside of your brain. It's that reaction and feeling and thoughts which leads to you either doing nothing or potentially just maybe picking up a drink, smoking a joint, whatever, going
Mhm.
and shopping. Nowadays, I believe we've blazed a lot of neural pathways in our brains to just scroll. Scrolling is a new sort, and that kind of need for to receive our dopamine through, like, whether it be sugar or scrolling on the internet. And what does that do? It leads us usually to comparing ourselves to other people. Again, that self loathing, that comparisonitis. I say comparisonitis, that's not a real word, but it accurately describes sort of what we do when we see somebody online, their highlight reel that we compare to our real life or our real experience building our business, which leads to, again, frustration, victim stancing, bitterness, jealousy, all of these things. Where if you just instead, you already probably have tons of ideas ready to implement, things that you want to try. Or if you do see something, if you're actually doing research and development, looking for ideas on the internet to recreate or for inspiration, once you get one, just taking action on it, that then begins to build a new neural pathway, for lack of better terms. Again, I love kind of cutesy sort of, like,
Mm.
things that make people, because neural pathways and blazing a neural pathway, I don't really know what that means. Like, that's some that's some shit that I don't really understand how that applies in practical life. So a lot of times we use phrases like money, love, speed, things like that to help us understand in layman's terms what this stuff means. But I think the other one is building a new habit. We hear this a lot. It takes 30 days, takes 60 days, take 90 days to build a new habit. That's another kind of way in which people have tried to explain this to us, that you have to do something for a period of time in order to make it your default. And your default is another word to describe your neural pathway. It's your default. My default, it used to be using drugs to cope with life, drinking alcohol. That was my default of all the things that I could do. That was the neural pathway. And it was exacerbated by a predisposed addictive personality. Okay. And potentially it was genetic, maybe, maybe not, likely, but I was likely predisposed to have that personality trait. I tried it. I liked it. I liked the way it felt. It became my neural pathway, the default, that no matter if things were good or things were stressful, that was my path. That was my default. And I had to, when I got clean, this is the best example that I have. When I got clean, I learned, Dave, you're not gonna be able to sit around and meditate your way into getting clean and building a new default. You're gonna have to literally act yourself into a new way of thinking. And what that meant for me was, when I felt like using, I needed to pick up the phone and call somebody. I needed to go try to help somebody. I needed to go to a meeting. I needed to get out of myself. What getting out of myself meant was, get out of your head. Tony Robbins has always said, if you're in your head, you're dead. That's
Mm.
another way to say this. And so this knowledge has been around or been communicated to us in different ways over time. And we all have examples of how we have blazed new neural pathways. But now it's coming back, it's becoming popularized. We're becoming more interested in this. And sometimes, if it's presented from a scientific standpoint, where somebody like yourself can look at it from a logical perspective and be like, oh shit, yeah, this is not just motivational bullshit. This is actual science, and it's been proven. One last thought. Just, I know this stuff from studying psychology over the past 15 years inside of marketing and just being a student of this. 15 years prior, they literally thought that your brain, 15, 20 years, this was a recent, in terms of medical breakthroughs, this was a fairly recent breakthrough in psychology. For a long time, they thought that the way you were was the way you'd always be. That's why they did shit like lobotomies and stuff like that. They thought they needed to drill your head and drain it and do all these kind of weird procedures, or put you inside of a funny farm or a mental institution if you had some sort of addiction or some sort of, personality trait or mental illness. And now we understand and know that with different forms of therapy, different forms of behavioral therapy, and there's 6 major forms of psychological kind of concepts or theories, right? I've gone through this in trainings at masterminds before. With this new knowledge, especially with the idea or this breakthrough that we can rewire our brains, people are a lot more on this train now to actually realize and believe that I can change, and it doesn't have to take many years for it to happen. It can happen rather fast.
If you got value from this video, would you please like that button below and also leave me a comment? I try to read them all. And of course, make sure that you're subscribed to my channel for more money-making videos as often as I can get them out to you. Go ahead also, if you want to learn more about making more money online and more different ways to make money online, then click that link in the description right down below, and I'll see you on the next video.